You know, it's really hard to work on my camper sometimes with all this stuff in the way. So this is some of the pine I've milled up. It's ready to go. So I'll probably back prime it and we can put it on right away. So I got these pieces here for my corner sections. I'm gonna get these glued up and then I'm gonna back prime the L sections and the back of the flats. And that'll be for the rear, front, and then center section. So when I'm building my corner assemblies, I'm gonna have to put the backs and fronts on first or have them be proud. I'll show you how they're going together. Because I need the whole width of this molding to cover this seam. If I overlap the sides from the back, it would actually sit a little bit inside the seam and it's gonna look pretty crappy, I think. I have to make sure I leave enough room at the bottom to hang down because there's going to be 1/4 inch molding going on the underside of the wings. And also under the cab over, on the front of the cab over and underneath. So I have little spacers to account for that molding as I'm laying the sides and the front and the back. We'll get to all that, but that's the procedure I'm making. So I'm making a few, so I'm just gonna build my assemblies, making sure I make one left and one right. So mirror images, I guess. And that's what we're gonna do at the bench right now. So these sections, I have one side that still has saw marks on it. I'm gonna make that the inside against the camper, mostly for aesthetics. I'm using PL polyurethane adhesive, so I don't really think roughing it up is, I mean, it'll be a little bit more open grained. It might have a bit more grab. I'm just gonna mark that side. Okay. And then, so I have one side that's already trimmed nice and square. And some of these have an untrimmed edge or just a factory edge, whatever. So we're gonna line up the cut edge for our assemblies. And then the top, we're gonna have to scribe it for the curve of the roof. I'll probably just install it and then just cut it flush after with a handsaw. So we're just gonna make one left side and one right side. So I'll spread my glue and put my piece on. And then I'll use this little spacer just to meter how far my overhang is. So we will actually, I'm going to turn that around. So now you can see, I'll build one in this orientation and one turned sideways or at a slight angle. So you can kind of see it. It's fairly straightforward. Some glue. So when I first place this, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So I want to get it pretty close to 1/8 overhang, just kind of eyeballing it. It's going to be a little messy. Just going to make sure this is relatively flush. Now, one thing I did forget to do before I had this all spreading glue was take a combination square or some other gauge and draw a line. So I can accurately see where to nail, although I can probably just do it with my finger here. Use it as a little quick gauge. Oh. Okay, it started drifting a tiny little bit. We'll just keep it a little bit on the side of the line. What I like to do, the piece isn't super curved, Put a few nails a little bit more spaced apart. If your board's quite bowed, you might have to kind of stitch it as you go along. So once you go spaced apart, then you can go back and fill in some of the spaces. Being mindful that all of these nail holes need to be filled. So I don't want to go too crazy, but these are the big corner sections, so I think it's worth spending a little bit of time. So you can just check. If you made any mistakes, you can just give it a gentle tap with a hammer or a rubber mallet. And now is the time to do it before your glue sets up. So we'll try to keep this glue wiped off. It'll be a little bit of glue residue on the stick, but if you wipe it down, it'll dry and you can keep using it without any big chunky blobs on. Okay. Oh, same thing. So, again, now you can use a combination square or a different type of gauge. You're just trying to draw a parallel line with that edge, and this should be close enough to the center. The reason I did that quickly is because I can do this and hold the board very easily. If you're trying to balance a combination square, especially, it's only like, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, and the blade is 12 inches long. So unless you have something to push this up against, the board is trying to move, and so this was accurate enough for my purposes, and it's nice and quick, and no fuss, no muss. Considering this is getting primed and painted, and potentially I will be caulking this little overhang seam. So you can see I have a reasonable amount of squeeze out. I've already actually wiped quite a bit of it off. I'm going to let that gel up a tiny bit and then scrape it off with a chisel to save a lot of... Sanding in that corner is going to be kind of a pain. It just really needs to be smoothed out. And then when you prime it, you can do a little touch-up sanding as you go. But yeah, it's quite chilly in here, so I'm going to wait 10 minutes, maybe 15, and I can probably scoop a lot of that out with the chisel before it fully hardens. And the inside, as long as there's no big chunks, it should be fine. My corner has a slight radius, and by the time there's PL glue, it's gonna be sitting off a bit. So as long as there's no like big hard pieces to really impede it, that should be fine. So I'm just gonna set up a chamfering bit in this router table. This router table consists of a 23-year-old Ryobi router, the Lee Valley base plate. This thing can actually pop out of here. It's a little awkward with one hand, so I'm not gonna try, but it does come out. This is an old IKEA shelf. And this birch plywood was a quarter sheet I bought, and I attached a circular saw to it. I made like a rip fence and a little miter gauge slot. So I ended up using that as a temporary table saw for a few months. Well, anyway, I made a few projects with it. So they both got to live on in a future form. So we'll get that set up, and then we'll get some edges run on this stuff. It's a little bit crowded over in this corner. I'm gonna have to move some stuff when I get up there. So I'm gonna use my spacer because there's also trim going underneath the wing. This piece has to hang down. I'll use the same spacer for the bottom and then for the front representation. So I will carefully get it pretty close to where it should be. I don't really want to smear glue everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to put one pin in. So if you just have one pin in, it's pretty easy to still manipulate and move around. Should keep you where you want to be. And I'm going to get a little rag, because I'm getting a little bit of squeeze out. Because my camper's not sitting completely level, I can't use a level to set this, so I've got to use this as a reference for my straight line. I will take a level to make sure that it's not bowed or bent in any way. I think that's good for the height. I'm good down here. So I'm going to put a second pin in. So this follows this line very nice. This piece is quite straight, so we're going to set it here. Remembering every nail you put in has to be filled. So I'm missing some footage for this part. I'm also missing some audio, and some of it I had recorded sideways. So I ended up putting on these front pieces. I did not glue these assemblies together first. I made them in, I put on the front and then the sides, and there was some 7-degree miters involved. They were fairly straightforward. So I'll let you see the footage I do have. I'm just explaining a few little things here, nothing very crazy. This side piece, I did actually glue the miter together. I glued it and taped it together before I put the whole assembly on, so that the actual joints of the miters were quite tight. As you can see here, I'm showing that I had it taped together and it's in one piece. And then I just peeled it on, and I did run a bead of caulk where this piece I'm about to put on butts into the piece that's on the front of the camper. So to make a nice seal. And it seemed to come out pretty well. Okay, I just ran to the store and got a few things, so I let this set up a little bit. So the next thing I want to do is cut this trim piece here. It's going to need a bevel, top and bottom, parallel bevels at 7 degrees. And this piece will have to cut down the middle and then make 2 opposing bevels. Splitting at 7 degrees would be 3.5. I did a test, I think 4 degrees. It'll make it a little bit more closed. Work better with the adhesive behind it. So I was just checking the fit on these ones quickly. They're just pressed into place right now, obviously. They're not attached. This one had the slight bevel, a 4-degree bevel on the inside there to match the angle here. Okay, I've got my glue spread. Made one long bead in the center just to kind of waterproof that joint a little extra. So I'm just going to line up the sharp point. Okay. Of course, I put my gun too far away, and now with the glue on, it wants to sink. So I'm just going to line this up with the joint right there. Actually, I might have to change my fasteners here. Oh, I'm trying to remember what framing numbers are there right now. You know, same thing. I want to make sure that we're not sagging. So I don't know if I'm yelling. So, I have the voice over because of that hiss. Sorry about the air hose, everybody. My camera's not really sitting level in this direction. It's kind of level front to back, but it's a little bit tilted. I'm just kind of using this to keep it straight. I'd even rather have it as a slight arc that way. Okay, so I'm going to put one pin in. If you use a longer straight edge, a piece of string or something, I'm just going to sight down it. That looks pretty good, actually. Okay, I wish I could stand a little bit further back, face on to see it. That looks pretty straight right there. So I'm going to finish securing it. So the bulk of the trimming is done. Like I said, the scale, I think it would look better if it was slightly smaller or narrower, but it's this size because I had to cover up all my seams. And I've always envisioned it this way, so some people may like it. Some people may hate it. I mentioned earlier, the top pieces of molding, I'm gonna wait till the roof's on and push them up tight. And then up here, after the roof is on, I'll have to do a bent, possibly a bent lamination for the front and the back. Anyway, the next pieces I'm gonna do is the front and the back. And then I might start cutting pieces for the under wings, but if I have time today, tomorrow might have to be